This is welcome to another episode of Steph's Box. Fuck yeah! This special guest today is Justin Scranton. He's North Carolina's funniest comedian, and then also Chris Elliot, slightly more heterosexual clone.
Yes. Oh yeah. I've never gotten that, but I totally see it now.
Yeah, like a spitting image. It's kind of eerie.
Wow. Yeah. Well, he's funny, so I'll take it.
Oh
He's
yeah,
really. I love Chris Elliott.
yeah, me
Yeah.
too. Did
Yeah.
you ever see Cabin Boy?
I did. It's great. Cabin Boy's
So
great.
ridiculous, so ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
yeah, I love people that are basically just flesh and blood cartoon characters, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. He's very. Yeah. That's very true.
Yeah. Yeah, do you know Zach Burke?
Yeah.
Slash
No, Zach Burke from
yeah,
Wilmington. Yeah. Yeah. Very well. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
not very well, but I mean, like, we've known each other for a long time because he's been in comedy for a while, and
Yeah,
so
like 10 years or so.
yeah.
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 But yeah, I always call him whenever I'd bring him up when I was hosting a mic, I always introduce him as my favorite cartoon character.
He has a very cartoonish like sensibility about him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, yeah, that's something I don't think I have in my wheelhouse, like being able to get a laugh just on, a pose, right? It's just like,
Yeah, yeah. I'm not a funny look. I mean, I'm funny looking, but not in like the comedic way.
right.
Like I'm like, yeah. I try to make faces and voices and um, stuff, but I don't have that look like Zach has, where like he just walks on stage and it's kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And he's got that kinesthetic awareness,
yeah,
like there's yeah, I don't have that at all. I'm very awkward like with like what I do. Like my movements are not orchestrated. I know as I've heard a lot of comics talk about, rehearsing their, mic stance or, which hand they have the mic in so they could do this hand gesture and whatnot, and like, go really deep on it. But I've
I mean, that's really. I mean, that's high tuning type stuff. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like it's like if you're at that point in a bit, it's like everything's worked, and then you realize that there's this little tiny thing you can do. Like now you see people like move a mic stand out of the way sometimes for a bit,
Hmm.
or bring it back for a bit, or yeah, that's when you know that a joke is really at its final stages when you're fine tuning it to that degree.
Right, right.
Yeah, you know, uh, yeah, that's like the whip cream on a pie kind of thing, where it's like the
Mm.
joke is really, really like the meat and potatoes of a joke to me are like the writing and the substance and the delivery and the timing. And then once that's getting like really good laughs, there's all this like micro fine tuning that can
Oh
happen.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So if that's the whipped cream, then what would you say is the nitrous oxide inside of the whipped cream can? Like the really good stuff.
The really, I mean, that's a good question because, sometimes I think there's an element of comedy that's outside of the comedian's control.
Sure.
Um, and it likely has to do most of the time with the audience and you're just not always, especially at the early stages of comedy, you're less and less control of the audience,
Right,
as you
right.
progress. And certainly professional comics, people that are, I mean, people that are famous, they have a lot of control of the audience
Yeah. They're
because
they're
they.
essentially hypnotists at a
Right,
certain point.
yeah, right, because they, if you pay $100 to see somebody, the idea is that you already like them enough to pay that money and you're not likely to be disappointed.
Right,
Whereas
right.
we perform for people that can be all over the spectrum.
Sometimes they're not even expecting comedy, which that's a
Right,
lot of fun,
right,
like who the fuck is this jerk off with the microphone? I'm just here
yeah.
trying to have a beer and watch the game.
So I think in that situation, like from an open mic to a bar show where people may not be expecting comedy, this is probably like, I don't do hot takes, but this is probably like a hot
Sure.
a hot take. I think the nitrous oxide,
Yeah.
which is also out of your control unless you are this person, is the host. I think
Mm.
I think hosting comedy shows, local open mics, bar shows, is the most important thing to the success of that show, and more people, more comics need to know how to do it, and it will not help your comedy to be a great host, but it will help you as a comedian.
Right.
If that makes sense. You will be a better comedian down the road, but it's not going to help you write a lot of bits. It's not going to help you write with the,
because a host is like less focused on their jokes that they're presenting, because they're there to like make sure the other comics look good and to maintain the energy of the crowd.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're there to sort of breathe the crowd in, see where they are, take their temperature, and then constantly sort of like continue to apply that thermometer and be like, where are you guys? And so, and a really good, I mean, I always say, like, a really good host, the show's great, everybody murders, everybody has a great set, they're like, this show was awesome. They never say, you were a great host, like, you made that possible. But a great show is almost always, there's a host that, like, he warms the crowd up, or they warm the crowd up, but not enough where it's like they're stealing laughs. And if something's awkward, they rehabilitate it. It's just like they do all these little micro things.
Right.
The show's great. Everyone thinks I'm an awesome comic. They never think about the host. That's the nitrous oxide for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hosted for a while. Like, I was hosting 2 different open mics in town for about a year, like every week. And it was never something that I had an interest in doing. And it was something that was just like, the prospect was frankly a bit terrifying. And I think I got decent at it, but it's like I've got that autism thing where I've got those blinders on that just there's no working around that so much. It's just an inherent Achilles heel. I remember I was talking to Steve Mars after a show one time, and he was like, "See, you're like such a good writer, but like, I think some people, like, sometimes your jokes don't land because like you could get laughs just by pausing and making eye contact and like reading the room, and I'm like, oh, that's great advice, Steve. Tell the autistic person to read the room and make more eye contact.
Yeah. I mean, I knowing your comedy and your set and voice a little bit, I think where comedians struggle with hosting is that, and I was talking to another comic about this recently, that I think that all comedians, like, you have to be funny and the audience has to like you. Like, if they don't like you, it doesn't matter how funny you are.
Right.
Now, if you're funny, you can win them over if they don't like you at first, if you're funny enough. But so there's just like this mixture of likability and funny. And but with the host, the proportions there are way heavy on the likability side.
Right.
You have to be fun, not necessarily funny, as a host. Like, as you move through the lineup, hopefully people get funnier and funnier. And if the host does their job, the audience will like them, because it's just like, it's like anything. If you and I are friends and you're like, hey, Justin, I love this person, I think you'll really like them too. I give them that like, oh, I'll listen. I like this host. So like you just have to have that, like, I like this person, and that likability comes from like eye contact. Like, they make it, they make it, they just, and that just takes time to like, and I know that I'm always cognizant that me as like a straight white male, like, I walk into a lot of rooms that I sort of have a default likability, because culturally, like, we're just sort of conditioned, structurally, to sort of default to the straight white male. So the times where I struggle with likability, interesting enough, is in like very progressive rooms where I just have to like go out of my way to be like, you can like me, right? And I have to like work on that.
Is that was that a motivation at all for writing the kinds of gay jokes that you do? Because like I hear, there's like hot takes on LGBT issues are a dime a dozen when it comes to straight white comics,
Yeah.
straight white male comics. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of I don't have a lot of gay jokes, but I do have some. I mean, I do
Right.
have some. Um, I think that the sometimes the couple that I have, I think are kind of hack,
Mm.
um, in terms of the premise of it. Uh,
I do like that bit about, you learned what your sexual orientation was, just how you learned what your favorite football team was,
right? Yeah.
from your dad.
Yeah. Right. Which is, that's, I mean, that's very much like, I approach sexuality as someone who grew up in, I was born in 73, so I grew up in like the 80s, or like my generation X. And,
Right.
you know, bisexuality was not a valid identification in the
Oh, I
80s.
know. I
And
know
I was,
that's
yeah, and I was struck by it. Like, now that I've been married to a woman for 21 years, irrespective of my desire or affinity for something that would be considered bisexual, like I'm in a straight relationship at this point, right? We're cisgender
oh,
straight people, right? So like,
right.
so, but if I were a comic now starting out, I mean, like I
Yeah.
heard so many comics identify like I'm bisexual,
Oh, right, right.
and I think that like that is I think it's a real thing. I think that our culture generally is more open to like, I don't have to be one thing or another, but
Right.
my generation, we did.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah.
I'm not that much younger than you are. Yeah, I was born in 81, so
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
like
so
less
you
than a decade.
right,
Um,
yeah, and so you remember, I mean, I remember that like,
yeah, you were either straight or you were fag, and those were the only
yeah,
options.
that was the extremes, and what was considered, gay was a host of sort of normal
Everything.
behaviors, right?
Yeah.
Like you like ballet, you're gay, right? Like
Yeah.
there was this real rigid code for
Oh,
being a
yeah.
man, and so like, and I never, and again, like I get a different world, I would just identify as like bi or queer or something that's not the norm, but
Yeah.
I didn't, so I try to dig into that, and
Mm.
um I have so many gay friends that I do, like my joke. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Um,
Excuse you. No.
yeah, that I definitely joke with them about, like the gay, the gay lifestyle now. It looks fun. It did
Right.
not look fun when I was a kid.
Not at all.
It looked dangerous. It looked,
Yeah.
I grew up during the AIDS scare,
Hmm.
and 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 the gay community carved out this beautiful space where they're allowed to like just have a life.
Well, to be fair, like, just as on a technical historical point, it was us trainees that paved the way.
No, you're right about that. For my podcast, we did a little story on this sort of trans drag, like kind of party house in like DC in the
Mm.
1800s that was
Oh, yeah.
revolutionary. A really famous drag queen.
I know who you're talking about. What was her name again? Queen.
I'm, yeah, I'm gonna forget, but like, I
Yeah.
mean, they raided that house, and the house was full of like senators' sons and stuff.
Of
So it's like,
course.
it was like, and judges were trying to make examples of this, but it was the trans community that really sort of, allowed the gay community in some ways. They were sort of shepherds to the flock,
Yeah.
So.
Well, it was the big badass bitches that started the Compton cafeteria riots,
Hmm.
which predated the Stonewall riots, which
Right.
um,
Yeah.
that was the you know, you're not gonna push us around anymore. So we're gonna be fabulous while throwing bricks through windows and beating up cops. Oh, I broke a nail.
Yeah, I think my take with that material. which is my take with all material, is
Mm.
that the closer that it is to my life, real experience that I have,
Mm.
the more valid it is, the funnier it is, and the easier those jokes are to tell.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I don't like necessarily telling jokes that are funny, but are not me. That like they're not a
Right.
part of my experience.
Right.
And I certainly experience things that I'm like, "Nah, I really can't joke about that.
And such
'Cause-
as what's your forbidden fruit?
um, you know, I what's my forbidden fruit? No, I think it's, um, maybe it's not material so much as it is as an approach to things.
Mm.
So like you probably know this joke I have about. Um, I don't know if I've ever done it for you, but it's about we now have an African American woman on the Supreme Court. And
Mm.
I'm very thankful for that. And then I say I would be a little concerned if it were all black women on the Supreme Court because like I've seen how y'all run the DMV.
Oh shit!
And
I haven't heard that one. That's good.
and like I've done that in like almost 100% black rooms,
Yeah.
perfectly fine.
Right.
Like it murders, and like I mean I've gotten like applause breaks on it.
Yeah.
I do it in a progressive white room, and I
Hmm.
have to like set it up so gingerly. Like I
Oh.
have to
Oh
make
yeah.
sure people know. I did it last night, and there were it was like kind of a row of African Americans, and they were like clutching their stomachs laughing,
Yeah. Mhm.
and I had to let the table at the way back. I'm like, just so you know, they're laughing up here. Like don't
Right.
like this is funny. Like I'm not like it's
I
black
had
women on the DMV. We all know it. It's a mafia. Be
yeah.
polite, be nice, and do
I
your
had
business.
a I had a similar joke, and I mean, like, totally different joke, but I mean, it's you know, uh, being a non-black person, just even
Right.
talking about black
Totally.
people, right? I mean, like, I had this stupid joke about EBT cards, or like, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to go into the bit, but I was trying to do this whole big like riff around that joke to kind of expand it and make it into a longer piece, and where I was just speaking from my life experience of like living in Los Angeles, and like coming from Georgia where and South Carolina where the racism is just like in your face,
Yeah.
and then to all of a sudden have like almost all my friends are black. I'm in a funk band as the only like white
Yeah.
person in there. Like I'm dating a black girl, like living together and like talking about these experiences. And the crowd is getting like visibly upset and getting mad at me. Like someone even said like Steph, this is making me really uncomfortable. You shouldn't be talking about this. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm just telling you a story from my life. This is stuff that actually
Right.
happened,
Yeah.
and it's like just completely unreasonable. Uh,
Yeah.
that knee-jerk offense.
Yeah. No. It's like certain words, certain topics. You could feel that like the audience kind of
Yeah.
inhales and it's quiet, and you can feel it. And I know comedians say that all the time. Like, wow, you guys
Hmm.
really pulled back, but
Yeah.
I don't think they know on stage how much you can feel their rhythm, their laughter, their breathing, everything.
Right.
And
Right.
so you feel it where you're like, okay, you guys just got quiet.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, all my comic friends who are white guys who talk about doing rooms that are predominantly black rooms,
Mm.
uh, we say like it's so funny that these jokes do so well
Oh yeah,
in front of
exactly.
an audience. I mean I've said this, and I know other people like I don't even do that joke if there's not enough black people in the room because the
Right.
white people are just like I don't know that we can laugh, and like
Yeah.
and it speaks more about what how white people feel that like sometimes I think with audiences and comics and just people in general that being woke is a performance more so than a set of beliefs and a set of actions,
That's
right?
what
Like
it's devolved into. Yeah.
right. I'm not knocking the woke movement because I'm not that guy. I mean, I'm just
Right.
saying,
Right.
but like if wokeness is just like this when somebody says this word, I take this posture, and I don't like
Right.
no, like then that's the definition of being asleep, right? You're not thinking, you're just
Well,
reacting.
that's the issue that I've been running into a lot, mostly in like online communities, you know, the echo chambers and everything, where like the activism, like people make it their lifestyle, right? You know, it's
Mhm.
not just I have morals and values that, you know, if challenged, I'm going to, you know, present a counterpoint to it. You know, it's just, you know, like the trigger words to where, you know, people that aren't even part of marginalized groups get way more upset and offended on behalf of somebody else. I've told this on the podcast before, but like not too long ago, I was banned from a subreddit for being transphobic. And then like
Right.
I contacted the moderator. I'm like, oh wait, hold on. I think you might have misunderstood. Like I am a trans woman, and I'm not, you know, like I'm this and this. And they're like, yeah, whatever. Go watch some more Fox News, you fascist. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like,
Right. Right.
am I in an alternate reality? You know?
Yeah, I mean that's I mean that's fodder for comedy in my mind
Oh yeah,
because I mean I think that we mistake. I mean I'll say this. I think that white liberals, Democrats, grossly underestimate the political allegiance of African American Democrats. Right?
right.
I think that alliance is very thin because there are some core issues that they would, you know, and so like the idea that like, well, you're a Democrat, so you must believe X, Y, and Z, or you're
Right.
trans, so you must believe X, Y, or you're black, so I don't
Yep.
understand why you don't support it. It's like people are all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. There's no monolith of any
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
And
Anytime that you think that a certain group of people is going to have this set of beliefs, like you have you have prejudged them by nature, and
well,
um,
that's what I see a lot of going on, especially with the younger, like you know, woke, or I mean more like
sure,
liberal leaning, is that they've they've made it impossible to have nuance in any
right,
dialogue on controversial issues. And when I was going back and forth with that moderator, I was like, you know, I was talking originally. I had posted about that swimmer, was like Leah Thompson or something, that
yes,
you know that you know
hmm
won like gold medals, and everybody was like pissed off about it. And I was saying, well, maybe, you know, we need to reevaluate like the process of getting into professional sports, and you know, like all the
right,
criteria, the litmus tests and everything,
sure.
because you know, because she was like on a hormone blockers for a year and went straight from male competition to female competition.
Mhm.
And as someone who's been on hormones for years, like that first year is not a big deal. There's not a whole
Mhm.
lot of changes going
Right.
on. And the fact that, you know, she's also running around in the locker rooms with her dick flapping around and still dating women cis women exclusively. Other teammates are, you know, are complaining and saying, it's like, well, you know, I kind of don't want to see a dick in my face when I'm like trying to, you know,
Right.
and it's
Right. Right.
and so and I'm like, you know, it's a nuanced point. You know, there's no black and white answer here. And then
hmm
the moderator's like, oh, it's absolutely black and white. Trans women are women and could do anything women do, and the other side are fascists, bigots who hate minorities for no reason.
Yeah, that's extremely problematic for me, both as a comic and as a person, because you know, I mean, let me just speak as a person first, because
Yeah.
I shy away from terms like everyone, always,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
all, like
Totally.
it, and that's not that's not me being unwilling to take a stance on something. It's me being very cognizant of how historically wrong moral truths and facts have been. Like, it's just
And
like,
just
yeah,
generalizations, you
just
know.
yeah, right. It's a really difficult proposition to tell me something that applies.
Absolutes. Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutes, generalizations, and assumptions. Those are
right.
like, yeah,
And so and I recognize that fairness is a incredibly politically charged, and whenever you make a decision, it's going to be unfair to some people. Fairness is really about trying to find a ground that accommodates as many people as we can. There's always going to be
sure.
people that are left out, and so it's all of it's just always been complicated to me.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then when you apply that to comedy, when people say like you can't say this or you can't talk about this or this is off limits or that's
Right.
always wrong and that, I'm like the only absolute to me in comedy, the only absolute is if
Mhm.
it's funny, you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if a white straight white male like me can make fun of black people
Mm.
and black people will laugh at it, right? And one of my favorite, kind of local, but he's more of a national guy, Jay Bliss out of Charlotte.
Ah.
You know, he told me, and I'll never forget. He said, "You can make fun of black people as long as you're right. When you're wrong,
Yeah.
they're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt because you haven't lived that experience. But if you say
Right.
something that's right, that's like,
Yeah.
oh, that is funny, right? Like we do run the DMV. We are slow with the
Right.
DMV. Like that, you're correct. They will laugh with you, and that's what to me that's what comedy should be. It's like let me find something that is like that even somebody I'm making fun of will be able to laugh at, right?
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
so I don't think anything that like that is off limits to me. What is off limits is stuff that's not funny.
Yeah.
And if you can't make it funny either because of who you are or how you say it or who your audience is, then that's what you shouldn't do, right?
Yeah.
Like you should
Well,
make people laugh.
yeah. Generally, I think the comics that are trying to push the edge by broaching uh, controversial topics that get the most worked up about wokeness are ones that don't know how to do it in a way that's not hateful, right? That like
Right.
it's not that you're talking about that topic, it's that you have a shitty take on it. Like
Right,
that's the
right.
problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just because some random person at the end of the show comes up to you and says, I loved you. Dude, you were the best.
You want to come to my clan rally next
Yeah, yeah, like
weekend?
that's not, you didn't like, you know, you didn't win over a fan. You won over like somebody that's got an agenda and was glad that you were finally sticking it to the libs or
Right.
whatever. Right, right. I'm saying like the goal of my goal is always can I make the audience laugh,
Yeah.
and I don't shy away. I really don't shy away from issues that I think are controversial as long as they're like part of my life.
Mhm.
Like it's like I don't invent parts of my life so I can talk about something. It's just like I have kids, I have a wife, I have sort of this life experience. I do live like I joke about living in a black neighborhood. I do live in like a legitimately black neighborhood. At least it was
Right.
more black when I moved in. It's less so now, but so I just try to joke about my life and find what I find funny and see if I can make the audience think it's funny.
Right.
And
Right.
that's my job. I
Yeah.
don't really try to stray outside of that. And I see a lot of comics who it's almost like they have desires to make points.
Right. 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 Be a like a social commentator,
Yeah,
like
right.
which I mean, some of the greats. I mean, Carlin. We've
George
talked to
Carlin, one of my
Carlin. Yeah.
heroes. Yeah,
Yeah. Same here. And you know, yeah, that was his thing. Like, he was part philosopher and comic.
right,
Like he kind of birthed that whole you know movement of philosopher
right.
comics. But the problem is like there's a lot of people that don't have anything useful to fucking say.
Yeah, and I do understand the way that like like people always talk about Lenny Bruce, which Lenny Bruce was really before my time. I mean,
Right.
I never I don't know that I was I think Lenny Bruce might have died before I was alive,
Yeah.
but I knew of Lenny Bruce as a kid, and people talked about Lenny Bruce being very influential. But I I don't know that we'll ever see someone. Well, I don't know that we'll ever see a white guy like Lenny Bruce who can come along and talk about society in the way that Lenny Bruce did. Now, we will listen to comics who have alternate views on society. My point is that
Right.
the I'm a white guy and I've figured this out routine. It's just old. Like like, I mean, it's just been. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe someone will come along that's that brilliant. But I think what we're seeing in comedy right now, which I really love, is we're seeing other people. We're seeing comics who are queer, who are trans, who are black. I mean, the black female experience, people that are Hawaiian. We're seeing people that are like, my take on this is completely different, and that's the people that I want to hear more of. And
like Josh Blue, right?
Mhm.
Like that's a very unique perspective with what is it, multiple sclerosis? Is that what he has? Like
Yeah, right.
yeah, and and it kind of throws out that window of that long-standing comedy trope of like you have to be relatable, you have to talk about things that everybody, like the Jerry Seinfelds of
No,
the
right,
world, and it's
right,
like
right. No, right.
I don't buy into that. It's
No,
just
I think uh, an old Raleigh comic. He's now in Chicago, and he probably stole this from someone, but he told me that somebody said that comedy is like being the most violent version of yourself on stage, and like
huh,
not violent in the way it typically means, but the most.
right,
You just take all of your like idiosyncrasies and you just turn them up to 11, and
right.
that's what you are on stage. And uh,
100%. I mean,
and
110%.
yes, and I do think that's right, and that's why I'm saying that, like, where I know my ceiling is I don't know that it's rapidly approaching, but I'm saying, like, I know what my ceiling is because I'm not a voice that's unique or hasn't been heard before. I'm just trying to do it in
Mm,
my own. I mean, they haven't heard me because I'm just me. I'm me. It's my experience, but it's not.
right, right.
There are other comics. I've said this to you that I feel like your upside, your ceiling is just way higher because there's just more that hasn't been. No one's really nailed it yet. No one's given that definitive performance as like a trans comedian that's like, oh, that's such a great special, like we've had I mean, like, think about the history of like black male comics,
Yeah.
right? The definitive, like Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, that whole story arc. And there will be the next great black male comic, but I'm ready for that, like, like the female story arc has sort of, evolved. I'm ready for like the
Right.
trans story arc or the gay story arc of like
Are you
comedians.
from
Go ahead.
are you familiar with Eddie Izzard?
Yeah, I know Eddie. Yeah, Eddie's
Yeah.
great. Yeah,
Yeah. Um yeah, who goes by she now, like
she.
finally after like 60 years of,
Yeah,
and all that time doing stand up with like the older terminology, like of transvestite, like
yeah.
and executive transvestite, but it's but even she, like, for that long, like, didn't want to be known as the trans comic, and
Right,
like it was, like, even had the bit, like, well, people ask, why are you wearing ladies clothes, and it's like, they're not ladies clothes, they're my clothes,
right,
and it's
right.
like just
Yeah,
kind of distance herself from that, which back then was definitely more of a stigma. um uh but it was a hidden stigma, it was a closeted stigma. And
hmm,
but uh but one of the things, yeah, that I said at the beginning when I started comedy was that I didn't want to be known as the trans comic either, and like for a while I tried to stray away from doing any material about it,
right.
but eventually it's just like, I mean, I gotta fucking talk about it.
Yeah,
It's just too much to talk about. And
yeah. Right. And I think all of us don't want to be known as X. This
right.
he's a really funny. Like, I don't want to be the old guy. Like, I feel like sometimes I am the old guy,
Yeah.
and that's not an adjective. That's Nobody's trying to, like. There's no diversity for old. Nobody's trying to create age diverse lineups, so it's not. I mean,
Right.
so it's not a beneficial label. But I don't. I just want to be funny,
Yeah.
and I think, um,
Well, old is a strength in comedy, I think, because
mhm,
um uh and I've said this about like what me starting. I didn't start until I was like 37, even though I wanted to do it since I was like 8 years old. And
mhm,
And so I feel like, oh, I should have started like 17 or, like, or
Yeah, I feel
gotten,
that.
and, but the thing is, when I think about where my mind was at when I was like 20 years old, I didn't have anything worth, like I didn't
Yeah,
have like I didn't have, it would have sucked. I would have bombed for a
right.
long time and probably gotten discouraged and gave up,
Yeah,
but
that's really wise. And
yeah. Well,
I would have done this. I would have either bombed horrifically and given up, or if I had had success, I would have killed myself. And I'm not saying
mm,
that hypothetically. I'm saying like
right.
I was not emotionally, psychologically, mentally mature enough to handle success on any
Oh,
level.
same,
I'm not
same.
talking about like blockbuster Comedy Central success. I'm just saying like if I was a touring headliner in my 20s, I
Yeah.
would have killed myself.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
so it's like
I can relate to that. Yeah.
yeah, so it you know it took a level of mental health to get me into comedy where I felt mentally healthy enough, and it's something that I have to, if I give up my mental health to do comedy, I'll lose both, right? I'll lose my
Yeah.
mental health, and I won't be able to do comedy because um,
That's interesting. Because the stereotype is that, or the common conception is that, comics have to be damaged to be funny.
mhm, mhm,
And I mean, it's true that, adversity breeds, breeds like adversity can strengthen one's character and bring out the best in people, or I mean it could just destroy them. But so, like, I think having a wealth of experience and trauma and things like that, produces good comedians, in that it gives you a different perspective and a lot of life experience and a lot of reasons to rail against this system and that system. And but at the same time, like you're saying, if you're still like living through that trauma while you're talking about it all the time on
mhm.
stage, I mean, you get, like a Greg Giraldo situation, or
Right,
Robin Williams, or like,
sure, yeah,
however many other
right,
comedians have overdosed alone in a hotel room on tour,
right, yes. I mean I do think that the mind, the wiring of a depressed mind, which I know that that brain, in my experience, usually has some sprinkles of anxiety, or maybe a lot of anxiety, or maybe there's some ADHD into there. There's some
Oh
hyper
yeah.
self awareness. There's whatever that brain is also a brain that leans towards comedy, because comedy ultimately is like hyper self awareness and
Mm,
observation, um, and then leans towards almost like a nihilism where it's like, well, do I just give up, or do
right.
I laugh about this because it's
Yeah.
just ridiculous? And so that's
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
the comedian side is sort of, I'll just lean into the sort of absurdity of life, um, and if you're not healing from, in my experience, like if I'm not healing from some of that, understanding who I am, and still being able to laugh at it, I will give in to sort of despondency,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I can't, you know, here's something that it's almost cliche, and you hear it a lot at open mics where people
Mm.
say like, "Well, thank you for coming to my therapy session. Like I used to
Oh,
do
right.
therapy, now
Right.
I do comedy." I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's a joke," but for some people it's real.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
like comedy is
Absolutely.
absolutely not therapy. If you're trying to work out your issues
Yeah.
on stage in front of people, even if you're killing it,
Hmm.
even if you're absolutely crushing it, you are a train wreck. I mean, you are absolutely like headed towards it. You will come off the rails at some point, and it
Right.
hopefully won't kill you. And I mean that. And you know, there's so many comics. Having been someone who's been through so much, um, you know, I'm not a very um, public person with a lot of stuff. I know some
Mm.
comics are with everything. I'm more of like a, hey, I saw you at the mic last night. Are you okay? Person. You know, like
Ah. Right.
I have a lot of private one-on-ones with people where I'm like, if you ever want to talk, like, hey, can I buy you lunch and see if you're doing all right?
Yeah.
Because it's
Well,
such
'cause
a real thing to me.
yeah. Oh, that's good. And
Um,
I was just gonna say, like, just point out like the generational differences too between the
yeah.
eras where we grew up versus now everybody just puts
Yep.
everything out. And uh, but then when people are doing that, then it's like, okay, well then everybody has serious mental health crises 24/7, and you can't help them all. But like going back to the like what you said about it's more akin to a form of nihilism like
Mm.
and that definitely resonated with me because um i even I even joked when I was being interviewed for the Star News about the comedy scene here that like I wasn't able to do it until I finally had enough head injuries to think that it was a good idea. Meaning like it was it was after if it was after like a kind of pseudo suicide attempt that ended up with a bad concussion and epilepsy and everything. And it was like at that point where I'd lost complete ability to function in society at all.
Mm.
I was at square
Yeah.
one. And
Yeah.
it was during that initial healing period that like suddenly I just started writing jokes that were funny. It was because I was like, okay, well, the universe isn't going to let me kill myself. And like, I've tried enough times, and it's just like, the hilarity of everything finally set in because up to that point, I'd taken myself way too seriously for way too long.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
um, and I think that's a source of a lot of people's pain is yeah, taking yourself too seriously.
Yeah. Taking yourself too seriously, which to me is akin to a sort of self-loathing, a displaced sense of just self-worth that so
Hmm.
many comics, um, and I mean, every comic that I'm friends with, like, we're never satisfied. The best set that we can have, where we just
Right.
murder, like, we immediately pick it apart.
Yeah.
You can have a room of 300 people, and 298 of them are laughing, and all you can do is think about that one table that had their arms crossed, and you're just like, what the
I've
like?
I've never understood that. And yeah, you're right. It's like so that's the default position for comics
Yeah,
is um like they're like known so many that have been at it for a long time that don't ever record any of their sets because it's like I just can't stand seeing
yeah,
myself. I can't stand the sound of my own voice.
yeah. I'm
Blah blah
that way.
blah. Just
Yeah,
and I think I think a good entertainer like has to have a degree of ego, like a healthier ego.
hmm,
I think goes a long way.
right.
Not that she can't get by being a self-deprecating piece of shit all the time, but it's just
Yeah,
why
yeah,
would you want to?
yeah. That's I think I think that a good shift for me is when you can separate, despite everything I've said about comedy being about myself, which it
Right,
is. But when I can separate the comedy and the performance and the work from myself,
right,
like when I realize that, like, what your job is to go make people laugh, and I'm very, very fortunate that usually when I perform at this point, I'm doing it for money. Like, I'm getting
yeah,
paid. It's not always a lot. It's very rarely any significant amount of money, but it is. I
right,
am getting paid, and so if I say to myself, "Your job tonight is to go into that room and make people laugh,"
yeah,
and that's your job. How do I do that? And then when I wake up the next day and I say, all right, I did okay last night. I need to work on this. I can tighten this up. Like, this will make me do my job better. Like, that when I think of it that way, the work of it,
right,
and dissociate it from my core value and sense of self, it's just like, yeah,
yeah,
I'm a good person, and I I try in my life as a human being to do what I think is right. And when I'm wrong, when I make a mistake, I try to apologize. Like all that is, but if your whole trajectory of your whole synopsis of your life is like, how did I do at the show last night?
Yeah.
Right. I crushed, therefore I deserve to get drink spot or get laid, or I deserve to get booked more or whatever. If that's what you think about, then like you're always, 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 always going to be disappointed, because as comics, we are always disappointed in our performances. So you can't attach it too closely to how you think about yourself, because
I wouldn't say I'm always disappointed. Like I think, but I think I'm kind of an outlier in that regard. I'm sure there's been times where it's come off as egotistical or braggadocio or whatnot, because it's like, if I feel like I had a good set, I'm like excited, I'm pumped, I'm like, oh shit, like,
we never want to say we have a good set to people. Like when you have a good set, you never want to get off stage and people are like, dude, good set. You're never like, I know, I just fucking murder. You always want to be like, thanks, man, thanks, and it was all right. Yeah, you kind of.
It depends on who it is, though, because I mean, there's I do think it's funny to like the false confidence, like overblown, like confidence, like, yeah, no, I know, it's like, but people that know me know that I'm doing a shtick and not, being genuinely that egotistical. But you said a magic word a bit ago, was disassociate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's like part of this, the symptoms of like some of my mental illnesses is, when, put into like an emotionally like charged situation, that just like disconnect and just like be somewhere else, right? And it was interesting, like it was that symptom, which it normally is a bad thing. It's normally like it's not conducive, except for when I first started doing stand up. That's how I got through the stage fright and the worrying about what the audience thought, or like, was like, my body was there and my mouth is like delivering jokes that I had written and rehearsed, but my mind is like miles away.
Right.
And which a lot of comics, say, you've got to be connected to the material and in the moment and all of that. That's essential. And, I agree, it is, but like, but I didn't see a way to be able to do it that way for a long time. And it's still something that I work towards, but,
that's interesting. Cause I don't know that I'm the exact opposite, because I'd certainly bubble. I certainly put myself in like, there's this bubble thing where I'm just like, I'm in my head and I'm just like, but it's very self-absorbed, where I'm just like, I sense and feel everything. Like, when you walk out on stage, I can hear the bartender crack a beer, and like, I can see someone in the back, the farthest table, cross or uncross their legs or fold their arms, or someone who's on their phone, and I'm just so hyper aware in those moments. And I have to sort of like just start the routine and just like get loose.
See,
and
that would be so distracting. Like,
I mean, it's distracting, but it's also like, for me, like when I can like really kind of just breathe that in and just be like, feel the room, feel that energy, feel where they are. Like, I don't know, that's where I really engage in, like, I feel like a performance,
Right.
I mean, it is a performance for me. I mean, I've seen comics who do a character on stage.
Right.
And when I was new in comedy, I really envied them. Who, I don't know who you or your audience is familiar with, but the person I'm going to mention is Andrew Dice Clay, which was a character that a comic did.
Right.
But that character and that I forget his name. Um, the comic who does Andrew
Yeah.
Dice Clay.
Leibowitz, something
Yeah, something like
Leibowitz.
yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds right. He did a lot of characters. His whole
Yeah.
act was like characters, but Andrew Dice Clay was like his like Guido and
Oh yeah.
everyone, and it was so popular that
Canceled.
yeah. Well, he blew up and people thought it was him, and so he would he had to walk in the club as Andrew Dice Clay, and he had to be
Right.
in character. And over time, I'm like, man, screw that. I don't want to.
It's got to be exhausting.
Yeah, and I saw him late because he kind of did a late career like run. He came through Raleigh, and I saw him, and I was like, God, he looks exhausted from. I mean,
Yeah.
the Larry the Cable Guy. I mean, Larry the Cable Guy
Yeah.
is a Yale graduate without any
Oh
Southern
yeah.
accent and people.
Yeah. I've seen videos of him like before the character.
Yeah, and he's just talking yeah, that's interesting. He's just, normal voice and
Mediocre material.
yeah, and but so I don't want to do a character, but I do know when I go on stage, I'm doing this sort of like I've said to people that I have a line where I talk about being a bad father.
Yeah.
And there's times where I don't. It's like there's times where I'm like, I'm not a bad father.
Right.
I use that as a setup for a joke. I have been a bad father at times, and there's things that I'm not good at as a father, but
yeah.
I am a good dad. It's just that's part of the right. It's the act, the
exaggerated.
performance. Yes, the
Yeah.
violent part of it's like the right.
Right. Yeah. I definitely do that to a degree too, because like I play up my blind spots and like the symptoms of my mental problems, like because the characters in part like exaggerating like the my aloofness, right? Like my lack of awareness of things around me and how normal people are supposed to be doing things, and it's not, and I'm definitely not that stupid. I mean, I hope not, but
Yeah.
um, so I wanted to ask you a bit about. I wanted to talk a little bit about our show that we did on
Yes.
Friday.
Right. The Port City's
Top comic.
top comic
Yeah.
preliminary. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
And so um, I I haven't done a lot of competitions for anything throughout
Mm-hmm.
my
Mm-hmm.
life. Like and because I'm not generally a competitive type of person.
Right.
Um, and but it felt weird. It felt really weird, like because it's one of those situations where you can go in and just fucking murder, right? Like
Yes. Which
I
you
mean,
did, by the way.
yeah, thank you,
Like,
thank you. I mean, that felt
yeah.
like one of the best sets I've ever
It was
done.
it was the best I'd ever seen you do,
Yeah.
and you know, everyone that I know that saw your set and saw the show were like, I'm genuinely surprised that I thought Steph had the best set of the night, and I'm not, and I
That's
mean
cool.
that, and so you're right that you can have the best set, and everyone who's done enough contests can tell you about the time that they did a contest and someone who got no laughs made it through.
Right.
Like, how did that happen? Did the people,
Um,
did he bring the room?
blowjobs.
Yeah, right. Is he? Yeah, there's always that conspiracy of
Yeah.
I mean, um, Amy.
I think the Illuminati was in on this one.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's plenty. Of stories. I mean, and again, Amy, who manages the Dead Crow Comedy Club, is great.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah, I love
so
Amy.
what I'm saying is not at all of it, but I know comics who've been in contests and they're like, yeah, they wouldn't let me win because I mean, if I were one of those guys that have been like, man, they weren't going to let a Raleigh guy through, and
Oh, right.
right. So it's like, no, that's not. It's just comedy is so, and I do talk about my wife about this, is that like I worked in corporate America for 12 years, and every quarter you have a review with your manager, and they tell you
Oh
like
yeah.
if you met your metrics and all that. But comedy, you get immediate feedback
Yeah.
every night on your performance. You know how
Yeah.
you did your job every time you go on stage, right?
Yeah.
And
That's one of my favorite parts about it,
yeah,
actually.
it's immediate reward, and that's good and bad. Um, and contests are like that on steroids, where it's like I go up on stage and I am told, right,
Yeah.
exactly where I stand in this order of people. And that's where it gets tricky because comedy is subjective.
Yeah.
And
But
so then,
I wanted to add too, like you also had a really killer set that night.
thank you. Yeah, um,
You went up first
I went up
to,
first,
and
which was challenging, always challenging in a
yeah.
comedy show, but especially a contest. I thought the host, Lou Morgante, who's a friend, and I thought he did a great job warming the
Oh yeah.
crowd up. I thought he got off like he did a joke. They were giggling, and I was like, "Please get off!" And he got off because I was like,
Yeah.
"This is where I don't want him to murder."
Yeah.
And then I got to come up and like try to follow him. They were laughing. They were ready. So and I went up and I did my thing, and I thought I had a really good set. I knew it was going to be tough to get to the finals, both because I'm out of town. I didn't have anyone in the audience to
Right. Right.
vote for me, so I was really just like, but honestly, like Matt McCaughlin, is that right? I always pronounce
Matt
it that way.
Coughlin. Yeah.
Coughlin. I always add a Mick in there.
We should do that just anyways. I'm
Yeah, it's
gonna add
Irish,
one. Yeah.
Scottish. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
Matt Coughlin, who I really think is hilarious and funny,
Oh,
and
very much so.
like he's like me. He's like I didn't ask anybody to come because I don't want that.
Yeah.
And I get that's how I am at contests. I don't want people to come. I want people to vote for me because they're like, you were generally one of my favorite
Right.
funniest
Right.
people, right? But it would have helped to have some people because
Well, maybe not. I had like 5 people there, but I mean, I invite friends and family to every single show I do. Like,
yeah, yeah.
um,
I don't do that any. I don't know that I ever did it. I did do it more at points, but I never did it like some people do. Um, which is smart. Look, if somehow you're a young comic and you're just getting started, like if you bring people to shows,
mhm,
if your friends come out to support you, you will get booked all the time because people are
yeah,
like, yeah, they're okay, but you know what? They always show up with like 15 people.
right,
So it's
right.
like, all right, well then we'll keep booking them. I mean, like,
That's just a habit that I've had from being a musician for 28 years. Like,
yeah, right,
y-
right, right. Yeah,
and like in LA, you have to sell your own tickets and pay the venue to even be able to perform there, which is
wow. Yeah.
bullshit. But that's
It's not
just
comedy's not far behind, at
yeah,
least it's yeah, I had a really I thought I had a really good set. I thought I had a really good chance of getting through. I was not the one thing I'll say that I was not prepared for was I didn't know going in that there was a like somewhat joking feeling amongst Wilmington comics of like don't let an outsider win, right? And like
oh, you're right, right,
yeah, I just didn't know. I mean, I knew that it was, Port City's top comic, and
yeah,
I never ever had any thoughts of getting to the finals. My goal was like, I have a show Saturday night. I'll go down, do the prelims. Hopefully, I can make the finals, and I'll get to do three shows in a
right,
weekend.
which is
That's all I
always a
want.
blast.
Yeah, it's always better than just coming down to do one show. So that was my goal, and I didn't. And it wasn't like anyone said, "Why are you? What the hell are you doing here? You don't live
Yeah.
here." It was more just like,
Why don't you go
"Oh,
back where you came from, boy?
oh, do you live in Port City now?" And you're like, "No, I know I don't. I just,
Mhm.
it's just stuff like that where it's just like, okay,
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that was why I didn't make it through. I
right,
just,
right.
I mean, I thought the
Well,
people that made it through my round, um,
I mean, I kind of felt some of that same pressure of like not wanting outsiders to win because I mean I'm not even from this planet originally.
yeah, I don't know that any of us are originally. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, my feeling with contest is that if you took our lineup, shuffled it, reran it in front of the exact same people, but in a different order,
Yeah.
probably a different result. Except, Megan and Matt, they had the room, and they had a lot of people there that at least knew them. Maybe they didn't come for them, but they were like,
Yeah.
and that's good. That's what you want as a local comic who works a club. You want to be able to walk on to the open mic or to a show at that club, and you want the local community to kind of know, like, this
recognizing.
is good, right?
Yeah.
So I don't blame that. I don't get mad at local. I mean, I walk onto the open mic at Goodnights or something, and both the audience and the other comics cheer for me because they're like, this guy's good. Like, he works here. He's usually pretty funny. Like, he usually, and that's what you want. That's what you want. You want to do that at your local club, and then you want to do it at the bigger club in the bigger city nearest you, and then hopefully you want to do that in New York or Chicago or LA, where when they say, Steph Sigma's up next, people are like, hell yes, she's hilarious. I love it when she drops by to do time. That's the goal of this whole thing. That's when you so to get that at your local club, like, I'm not mad at Matt or Megan or MT who are working that club for getting through, because I thought they all had good sets. I just thought you had the best set of that round.
I appreciate that. I had one thought about it, and I was kind of surprised and disappointed that it like the voting process was running that way, because with like 10 comics doing like 5 to 7 a pop, and there was definitely a goldfish effect, because like I was imagining that the audience members would have the voting cards at their table when they sat down. So like throughout the whole set, they can write down like, I loved that. I love that.
Yes.
And but so they didn't pass out the cards till the very end. And coincidentally, maybe not, the 3 finalists were
second half.
Almost literally the last 3 comics to perform.
Yeah, that's pretty typical. And again, this is not me mad or
me neither.
But also, like, some competitions, like, once a round starts, like the first comic's up, no one gets in the door, right? And if you leave, like, they take your ballot, because the idea is, like, you can't show up, vote for your friend, right? You can't come in at 8:00, write down my guy, and then leave and go drink and just be like, but so some competitions are very, very strict about that. Like, you have to be for the entire show to vote. It's not fair otherwise. This one was not like that. Like, people came in, and what I do like, and they did a really good job of explaining this, is, like, you don't have to vote for 3 people. If you were just there to vote for your friend, just vote for your friend, right? And so and the reason I like that is because there is a part of comedy, a part of it that I'm really, really bad about, which is like, part of comedy is self-promotion. So if you could get 25 people to show up, and they're like, we're going to show up and watch Justin, and then we're going to dip, and we're all going to vote for him, and then we don't really care about anybody else. That's not maybe fair to the other comedians, but it also is part of being a comic that, like, I was able to bring a bunch of people, right? Like, I mean,
because ultimately, it's your audience that's going to make your career, and
absolutely. So it's like, it's not, like, I mean, I know so many comics, myself included, where some TikTok star who's got 2 million followers is selling out rooms, and we're all like, what the hell? They're not funny. And I'm like, you know what? They have 2 million followers that they've built. So, like,
somebody
I don't know. I mean, if you're a club and you're like, I can put this guy up that's really funny that will sell 22 tickets, or I can book this person who will sell out 3 or 4 shows at 300 seats apiece, who am I going to choose as a business?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Mhm.
as much as I'm like, you know,
Boo capitalism.
yeah, but I'm like, that's not, you know, that's not wrong to say. Like, you know, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
I mean, I hope, like, in a packed out room, that the funniest person will win. But I just have been to too many. I've seen enough comedy contests and rounds
Right.
where the funniest person did not. Not the funniest isn't the right word. The best set did not win. Right.
Right.
Right. When I won North Carolina's funniest
I was
contest,
gonna go there. Yeah.
I'm not. There were people on that stage. I'll even go so far as to say everyone on that stage is probably funnier than me and probably has more upside in their careers than me. You know, they're younger. They have a better take on life. Matt was on that show. Asatu
Yeah.
Kumar is a Raleigh comic who's brilliant. Aoife Sinclair, who did Port City last night but didn't make. She didn't make the finals, but she's just really, really sharp and smart. Byron Johnson, who did make the finals of Port City. All of them, in many, many ways, are funnier than me. I just had the best set that night. Like,
right.
That show was on a Sunday night at Goodnights Comedy Club. I had opened up for the headliner that entire weekend. So I did Thursday, 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday, and I ran my contest set 5 times in a row for Big J Oakerson show, which is a sellout crowd every night.
Hell yeah!
And I just murdered. So I had that 8 minutes down.
Yeah.
Like, and then I came in Sunday and I was like, this is just my 6th show in 3 days. So this is going to be really, really simple. And that's what it was. And I swear to you, that's a huge factor in why I won, is because I got a good spot in the lineup. I was like 3rd or 4th. And I did well enough to where I felt like the person after me is going to have to murder. And if they murder, they're going to win.
Right.
And I just was relaxed on stage, and I just had that benefit. So it's such a roll of the dice. And
it's funny. Speaking of after my set, Matt had come up to me and said like, damn, Steph, that was really good. And I'm like, oh, thanks. And he was like, yeah, it was too good. It kind of pissed me off.
Yeah. Matt, I think really highly of Matt.
Oh yeah, he's awesome. Yeah.
Very funny and huge potential. And but like he joked with me before the show about when I saw your name in my round, I was just like, son of a bitch. Like,
yeah.
I gotta go again. And he's like, I didn't even watch your set. I didn't want to watch because it would make me nervous. And and I told him I'm rooting for him. And he was like, I'm not rooting for you. And I'm like, I understand. Like I get it, but I'm rooting. I was rooting for him.
I was hoping it was going to be you, me, and Matt. Like,
yeah, I thought that was in my head. I was like, I think I had one of the 3 best sets. I was like, it's gonna be really close. But I was thinking like, yeah, Matt. But it's like I was okay with it. I'm okay with it because I had a really good set. Right. And I would
won
rather
in the contest of you.
yeah. I would rather have a really good set and not make the finals than have a really like a bad set or not a good set and be like, how did I make the finals?
Right.
Made the finals,
Yeah.
Even if I had a huge crowd there and I'm like, I didn't have a good set. You guys should not, like, I'm just self-deprecating that way where I'm just like, I mean,
the imposter syndrome never goes away.
Yeah, right. Like I'm just like I don't deserve to be here, right? I would rather have what I had happen. And I joked. I posted on Instagram saying like good luck to everyone in this contest. Asterisk, except for the person who was really mean to me, and everybody was really mean.
I saw that.
And
I was wondering.
People were messaging me and be like, "Who was it?" And I was like, "I'm totally trying to get in people's head. I'm trying to trying to make everyone think before the contest that they were that person." Was I mean to him? Oh my god, I'm terrible. just because I was like, I'm just going to try to mess with the people that beat me and get in their head. Like Ellie Coleman, who's in the finals tonight, she messaged me and she's like, "Who was it? I'll take care of him." And I was like, "Nobody, just totally just psychological warfare,
sour grapes, just low scale sour grapes."
A passive aggressive way of just being like, yeah.
That's funny. So the Goodnights are North Carolina's funniest. That's in at Goodnights.
Yes. It claims to be North Carolina's, but it's, I think, in fairness, Goodnights is, I think, the most important comedy club in North Carolina, for various reasons.
Well, accessibility, like when as far as like a tour schedule goes, like it's a lot easier to get to passing through than Wilmington is.
Yeah, and Charlotte has a couple comedy clubs, and obviously the Idiot Box. And Greensboro has another comedy club that's kind of really off the radar, but the Idiot Box is a great club and they book great shows. It's just Goodnights has such a history and tradition. That contest has attracted a lot of people who've moved on to much bigger and better careers than I will ever have. But so it calls it North Carolina's funniest, but I don't know that it does draw from all over the state because Raleigh is kind of central. So it does bring in people from all over. So that's also one reason why it's called that. So
I signed up this year. Like I almost signed up last year. Like a couple of comics. My buddy Mike Bird was on there. I think he placed like 8th or something. But he was like trying to encourage me to sign up. I'm like, I'm still pretty new. I don't think I'm funny enough to like go to that level. But I don't know. Is it a similar like crowd vote situation?
It's different that the preliminaries are completely crowd vote, which does make it hard for an out-of-towner. I will say this. That's different than what I saw at Dead Crow, because Dead Crow is capped at 40 people. And, I think the reach there was to working comics in the area. And so that was what I mostly saw. Like there were very few people on that list that I didn't know of. Right? Of the 40 or so people in the prelims, I knew most of them. Some of them were new, some of them were veterans, but I knew most of their names.
Right.
Goodnights has a history of people that are like, I've never done comedy, but I think I'm funny, so I'll try it. So you have people that literally like I can remember years ago it's always some person. This one was like a guy had never done comedy. He was an Asian American guy who had some awful name for himself, like comedian, smack your mama in the mouth or something stupid. He's always And then he just did this awful black voice and dropped the N-word hard R for like 10 times. And it's just infamous for like train wreck comics, just like who have no idea what they're doing. And some of them get through because they're just like, everyone in their office comes and votes for them. And so it has a little bit of that, more of that wild card to it. But the first round is audience vote. And then the next 2 rounds are judged votes. I mean, like judges. So you're judged by usually it's different judges for the semis and the finals, and the finals tends to be industry people. So Amy Elfers, who's the manager at Dead Crow, and Jenny Stencil at the Idiot Box, they usually come in to judge, and that's good. That's good because that's what you want. You want industry people to see you. So people that write about comedy, I know Tony Castleberry, I think, was a judge for a while. He's a comic now, but he was a writer about, a journalist who covered comedy. They usually bring people in that, like, sometimes they'll have a past champion come in and judge, and it's like, so it's different in front of judges than it is in front of audience.
I mean, it's no less subjective, but I mean, there's like a higher degree of objectivity coming from somebody who works around, like sees comics like as their job just all the time, and can appreciate different styles and approaches and personalities, and not be so set into one thing.
I like a mix. if I were to
Yeah.
do it, if I were to design a contest, I would say there would be audience vote round one.
Mm.
Round two would be like 60% audience, 40% judges,
Mm.
and then it would be like 60% judges, 40% audience, or something like that. Because I think that like there was someone in one of the rounds. It was the second round on Friday night, which I don't know if you were there, the round after ours, who did a word for word stolen joke from
Ooh.
Daniel Tosh, like word for
Oh
word.
shit. Oh,
And
did you know their name?
I
Like,
do
did
know
you
their I do know their name. I'm not trying to call them out for it,
Right, right. I'm
but
curious, but
but
it's okay if you don't want to say.
like, as soon as I heard it, I was like I heard the setup, and the setup's a little bit like, you know, kind of hack. So I was like,
Yeah.
you know, they say money can't buy happiness. And they're
Mm,
like, but money can buy a jet ski. And I'm like, wait, that's exactly a Daniel Tosh joke. And then he was
yeah.
like, you ever tried to frown on a jet ski? It's impossible. And I'm like, that's
Oh,
literally
yeah,
word
yeah,
for
yeah.
word Daniel
I've heard
Tosh.
that joke. Yeah.
Now, it didn't do great, but if it had, right, and the
That
audience is
that's all that
laughing, like, that
matters.
guy's hilarious. Hopefully, judges are like, that's a Daniel Tosh joke. Like, I'm
Right.
definitely voting you down for that. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
where, like,
I think you should be disqualified and
yeah, that
publicly
should not.
humiliated.
Right. Yeah. So it's like I like judges because that I think they just balance out the sort of electoral college, or the populist vote electoral
Right.
college thing. Yeah. So
Well, you see how well the electoral college works in this country.
yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
We're right. It's worked. It's worked. They've put the president in office who the popular vote elected every time, except for
No,
they have.
Trump and Bush.
Oh, they both got. The
Yeah,
popular. Oh, right. Well, no, no, I don't want to talk about this. No, I hate it all. Burn it all down. I don't give a
yeah.
shit. I like,
Hail Satan.
yeah. I don't care. Yeah.
Yeah.
I, I'm just saying people are idiots,
Yeah.
and um, you know, I I've only seen a few contests. I've seen lots of rounds
Mm.
where I thought, that's crazy. I can't believe that person got through or that person didn't get through. I've
I'm
seen
like
plenty of that.
Dat fan.
I've rarely seen a finals where the winner, I was like, that's not cool.
Yeah.
Usually the winner, they're like, that was the funniest person tonight,
Mm.
right? Like that was the funniest person.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to to ask you this about winning last year. Um, how did you notice much of a change in your career as far as like bookings or pay or anything?
no. I mean, it's a really good question. You know, my take on comedy contests at this point, um, which I stole from other people, is that um, they're really useful for regardless of winning, right?
Hmm.
Because of the reasons we've talked about. Don't go in thinking you can win, thinking it's your year. Go into it with like, I can usually get a good tape out of it. A lot of
Yeah.
times it's the best way to, especially if you're a new comic, you can get a great tape. That's important.
Right.
You can get in front of the club, right? And that's usually important for new comics. It's at those contests where a lot of times club are like, oh, we should take a look at this person more because they really did well, especially if you make it to the finals and you do well in the finals.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
use it as a benchmark, right? To say,
Mm.
I've done this contest every year. Am I getting better? And if you do it in successive years and you're like, you know what, I did worse. I'm getting worse. Then
Yeah.
it's time to say what's going on. Like, and
It's time to
ask.
put on a southern accent.
Right. Do I need to change my focus? Am I not? And that's really important. Now, for me, I already have been very fortunate to get work at Goodnights, and so that didn't change. I did get COVID at the show.
Ooh.
So after the show, a comedian was like, I hate to tell everybody this, but I just tested positive for COVID. Like 2 days later, I tested positive. So I
Fine.
did get a huge, like, I got messaged because you get like, congratulations, awesome news. And then you get people
Right.
like, hey, I'd love to book you. Would you do this? Would I do this? And I was like, I think I have COVID.
Mm.
So I shut it down for a month or two.
Yeah.
And, uh, and then when I came out of that, I had already kind of been doing this, but I came out and I kind of said, all right, I'm gonna get paid if I do comedy. Like, so when people would say, hey, do you want to do this show? I'd say, yes. What's the pay? If they're like, I don't pay. It's kind of just stage time. And I'm like, I'm,
Mm.
I'm ready to start like, and that's not a hard and fast rule because there's plenty of
Right.
shows that don't pay that I like. And there's friends that are like, would you be willing to do this? And I'm like, absolutely.
Right. Right.
And I'm not, stage time. And obviously I pay to do a contest city.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I still want stage time. It's just, it shifted my mindset a little bit to say like, I can do this not full time. I mean, it's not how I pay my bills, but
Right.
it's part of how I pay my bills. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Same. Um, have you ever heard of a contest called it's based out of the UK called So You Think You're Funny?
Yeah. Yes. I have heard of that contest. Yeah.
I ended up signing up with that for that one, like towards the end of last year, not expecting anything. And apparently, I'm doing the preliminaries in June, but it's over Zoom. And like, did you do
Yeah.
any Zoom comedy during the
I, I,
pandemic?
oh, this is hilarious. I did. I hated it.
Right?
Every second I was on a Zoom show, I hated it. I think I did two or three,
Mm.
and I was just like, if this is what comedy is, I'm done. And so then, um, last month, so Goodnights Comedy Club, as most people know in Raleigh, is changing locations.
Mm.
Um, it's been somewhat of a phased closing, and that's has to do with just the realities of construction and other things. But
Right.
um, they have an upstairs room. It's a 3-story building. It's an old ice cream manufacturing plant,
Mm.
and the third floor had a small performance space. It's about seats about 55 people, and then there's a bar area, and
Mm.
that's where a lot of smaller shows and a lot of local comics start out before you really ready for a weekend night at the main room. You do a weekend upstairs with a comic. The comics up there tend to be a little less famous, although some of them are pretty big names.
Yeah.
It's a great room. It's just small room comedy versus big room, which I love small room comedy.
Mm.
Uh, so they closed that down in June, and I headlined the last show in that room,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
and it was a real honor to do it and to be there. And I had great friends on the show with me. But so you get done and you go do a meet and greet, which I'm not good at that stuff. Like, I'm learning how to,
Mm.
like, that's how you build your fan base. Is you're like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
be hanging out, come say hello if you liked me. And so a woman came up to me after the show, and I had stickers. She's like, "Can I get a sticker?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "I love you. I think you're hilarious.
Mm.
And I saw you on a Zoom show that you did, and I followed you ever since."
Oh,
And I was
wow.
like, "Are you kidding?" I was like, that. I was like, and that's the part I don't get is that, like, I do a lot of shows, and I don't like what I need from a show. If I do a show and there's 50 people there, the 2 or 3 people that loved me, that laughed at everything, those are the people I need to be like, please follow me, please come to
Yeah.
my, like, because then over time those 3 people become 300, that become 3,000, that then eventually you've got 65 100,000 followers who are like, I think he's hilarious, I love his stuff. And
Right. Right.
that's building a fan base, which I just have never, I just haven't, I have this mentality that, like, I'll just be funny enough and people
Right.
just, and it's like, that's not
It's
how it works anymore.
Yeah. Well, it almost, I don't think it ever really did. I mean, because like I've said, I've been in like the music biz for 28 years, and I remember when I was starting out, like I started gigging in like '94, And with my bands then, it was always like, well, we need to get in front of that one record producer that'll see how awesome we are, and then we're made for life. We get to make an album and do all of that. And so yeah, like I've always operated with like, for the longest time I operated like with that mindset: just be the best that you can be, and you know it'll happen. But it's
Yeah.
um you know
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think that it was ever that way, and I think now to be a touring headliner, one, it's just a different industry
mm,
today than it was, 10 and certainly 20 years ago. Um, but you have to have a presence outside of your scene. You have to have some kind of following. You've got to put out, clips on YouTube or social media. You've got to build that fan base and engage with them. And some people really, I've never met anybody that really likes that, but I've
right,
met people that are really good at it.
yeah.
That are like, they say, yeah, I hate it, but I do it every day.
Yeah.
Like I put out 3 clips every day and I work at it. And that's the job now of being a comic. It's not, I wake up, I get coffee with my buddies, I write some new jokes, I go to the cellar, I work them into my routine, and I build this bucket of material. It's like, now it's like I edit some clips and I put them out, and I pick up X number of followers a day because that's the job. And
yeah.
so
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I'm one of those people that, well, like I'm not good at it. And like I don't like and be spending much time on social media, because it's generally a cesspool. It's just like,
yeah,
I mean, it's bad for my mental health too, because like it's a space where everybody is showing like the best part of their life that always has to look awesome. And
hmm hmm
it's just like every time like I go on Facebook, like within the first like 3 to 5 minutes, I'm already like fucking miserable, because it's like, oh, well, there's a bunch of opportunities that I'm missing out on. Oh, there's something that, like
right.
I didn't get to, like I'm just fear of missing out. But it's like, okay, well, like, like,
Yeah,
everybody has this vibrant life going on, and
right.
I'm just in a,
And you're, in small town comedy scenes like Wilmington and Raleigh, and it's honestly, it's true in big town comedy scenes. I know because I have friends there. It's like,
mhm,
your friends like, hey, I'll be doing a set, Friday night at this bar, and you're like, how are they getting booked? Like I've never been booked there. Like
right,
what am I doing wrong? Like why do they not like me? It's like
yeah,
I'm objectively funnier than they are. Is there some problem with me? And it's like, so it just becomes like no one ever thinks they're being booked enough, or that, and so it all that social media stuff will eat at you. And that goes back to what I said, is that like you've got to separate the work from who you are as a person. And I think it's critical for me, my mental health, to just be like, this is the part of me that's my job as a comic. I have to do these things.
right.
And then this is who I am as a person, who's a good dad, who
Sometimes.
sometimes trying to get better, that has this other life that I have to do, that provides the material for me to be funny, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah. um yeah.
Yay. Well, yeah, I don't, uh, we can wrap it up on
Yeah,
that insight, because it's,
that powerful life point by Justin Scranton. Yeah.
yeah,
um
yeah, yeah.
yeah. um yeah, well, man, I have had a blast talking. I don't usually talk
Oh, yeah.
like this. It's been really good. It's
Awesome.
yeah, and I am a huge fan of you, and I
Oh, likewise.
yeah, and I just hope you continue to do comedy, and I've told you that, once you figure out how to tell your story and make it funny, and you're going to continue to see that more and more people are like, she is my favorite, because you've got a unique sense of humor and position, and so it's really cool to see. So
Wow. Well, I appreciate that so much, and
yeah.
and thanks again for coming on. And it's like Mother's Day and everything, and you got all of that
Yeah,
going on,
yeah.
but for taking the time and
She
dealing with
wouldn't
all
be a
that. It's
mother
like,
if it wasn't for me. That's what I tell her. It's like I made you what you are. She's in the back. She just told me to. She just said,
Yeah,
"Fuck you." That's why I love my wife. So yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks a lot, and
Thanks,
hope to
Steph.
see you around soon.
Yeah, I'll see you soon. Awesome. Take
All
care.
right, bye.